Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, we have a bunch of work to do to the split window behind me. We need to finish modifying the rear floor to accept the Roadster Shop chassis, so we need to install Dynamic Corvette's rear big tubs in it. And we also need to finish the underside of all the floor to make that nice and smooth so we can glue the rear clip onto the bird cage to make this whole thing one split window again. So be sure to stick around. So the goal today is to start fitting this rear floor into the roof in the floor of this 63 split window. And if you're new to this project, go back and check out the other videos on it. We've done a ton of work to get to this point. We had to rebuild the birdcage. It needed new rockers. It needed some windshield framework, new gutters, needed a couple little patches here and there. And in the last video, we started skinning it in fiberglass. We have the firewall on, the plenums, the bonding strips for the windshield, all the bonding strips for the roof, the floor pan, and the rockers. So we did a ton of work to this thing. It's coming together quick, but now we need to mock up the back end on this. This is going on a Roadster Shop Spec 7 chassis. And whenever you do that conversion, you need to change up the rear floor. So I have this kit here from Dynamic Corvettes, and my customer ordered this custom in their blonde color instead of their usual black, just to keep all the fiberglass kind of the same color in this car. So let's get this back end on here, and I already know where to cut. We'll mark it out. We'll cut out the floor in this car. We'll start fitting up this. I would like to get these tubs installed today. And then I'm not gonna glue the rear clip on just yet. I'm gonna leave that loose so that way I can finish up some floor work in here. Once all that's done, I'll glue the top on, and then we'll glue the center section in. And now the bird cage sits flat. The back end sits flat. You want to make sure everything's flat before you start diving into the floor. Now, this is made up of a couple different cars. This back end did not belong with this floor. This came from a red car. This came from a blue car. So this floor was already cut out how you see it. So what we're going to do is just finish the job. I'm going to come around here along this wheel well. Basically, we're going to come, it's probably easier to see from this side, on this radius the whole way down. Once we hit here, we're going to go straight across right there, and then I just laid the floor jack handle with a couple shims on it, and I just ran a line straight across here. You can see we're rubbing a little bit in here. All that's going to get deleted anyways with this rear floor. Once we get those pieces out of the way, we'll be able to set these tubs in. So I cut the wheel tubs out, and it got a little bit floppy on this side. We'll have to tune that up. But I made my cut straight across the wall, as straight as I could, because my saw is kind of going wonky on me. And you can see there's not a lot left back here. I also trimmed up one of these splash shields. All I did was I held it up on the car because this came off of this car. And I just continued my line down right to here, straight down, and there's like a little body line here. I came up, I don't know, about an inch above that, and then I cut it right through this edge right here. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one. It'll get cut probably about in the middle of this, up an inch up and down this, and then we're going to run side pipes on this, so I'm going to delete the bottom of this kind of to match the one that's broken, which is fine because we don't need this piece anyways. I'll get this one trimmed up, and then we should be good, and we can get some wheel tubs put in here just to see what they look like. I have the rear floor tubs mocked up, and they look pretty good. This is just the first trial fit. I did end up having to take these little corners off the bottom of the wheel tub down here to clear the bird cage, and then these slid into place, but they're still in here roughly. You know, there's still some gaps I need to trim in here. I need to refine my cuts over here because there's some that stick out that's preventing this tub from coming over. So we need to sit here, grind everything. We also need to grind our mating surfaces. So if we start, I'll just come through here and start prepping all of this out and slowly whittle it away. This wheel tub comes from the inside, and then this piece lays on top of the floor. You can see the difference here. So up here, you're going to want to leave some more floor. where in the center, we're gonna wanna cut the floor right up to this lip because this step here is supposed to overlap with this. So you can see we still have a good bit of trimming before we can get this really fitting how it's supposed to. So I'm gonna start making some marks. So I've been working on refining the fit of these tubs, and so far it's looking pretty good. You can see this tub is all the way against this pillar, which it's supposed to be. I started scuffing the underside of this, and I still have some more to trim. We're still overlapping by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch if I push down on that, but that's looking pretty good. I have this splash shield installed here. It's all fitting up pretty decent. Our fit through here is nice. So I think we're to the point where we can start screwing this in place. But I would like to first get these splash shields glued into the original tub, and they line up with a couple rivet holes in the bird cage. I also threw a sheet of plywood it was the perfect width in here, just to space up on top of the control arms to the floor tub. That way we have a little bit of a gap in here, you know, so that way it fits pretty tight, but it's not too close. There are 2 body mounts in the middle of the car in here, and you can use that to also make sure that that doesn't hit. But for my fitment, this is pretty nice. 1 board, and we can even put more shims on top of here if we have to. We need to glue the rear tub onto the car. It's just sitting here. The front floor is mostly done. We need to pull the back end off, and I need to clean up and finish up some of this floor treatment I did down here. There's some extra fiberglass that we have to cut off. I need to remove some screws. We need to fix all of that. Then we need to pull this floor and birdcage off, and we need to finish the underside of the fiberglass repairs we did up here. I let my fiberglass cure up, and I'm happy with the way all these patches turned out. They're nice and strong, and they're a nice smooth transition. So I'm going to come back and just knock all the loose fibers off of this just to make it smooth enough for him to do his final body work and stuff. So I cleaned everything up, and I put a real light coat of Fiberall on some of these repairs in here just to cover up those little holes, just to help blend all this together to make it a little bit smoother. And I did those holes down there. So I'm going to sand all this up with 80. I did the same back here. So I'll just scuff these up, and then that's going to do it for the underside of the car. So I finished sanding the floor and I decided to put the body back together, and we have the doors mounted on, and I started aligning them with the roof, and it's getting pretty close. The front is just a hair low, so I could probably build that up with a little bit of fiberglass filler before we glue it. This through here looks pretty darn good. There's a high spot here that I need to investigate, so I'll put a mark on the door so we know where it is on the bird cage and on the roof, but there's something going on here that this needs to suck in, and all this looks pretty good through this transition. So a lot of this can still be moved around. I don't have all the clamps on it that I need, but you can see that that's a pretty nice gap. Over on this side, it looks very similar. It's very smooth through here. This transition is nice, and this is a little bit lower than this, so I have to investigate that. I have to do some sanding on the bonding strips anyways, and the front of the roof is high, but I can see that there's a big glob of glue in here. So what we're going to do is pull this roof off, and I need to grind the bonding strips. I already ground the underside of the roof to prepare for gluing, but some of these little high spots and just the transitions between the different bonding strips, that could be holding us up in some of these areas. So we're going to go take care of all that. I also need to mark on the floor where I need to grind that to glue these custom tubs in, because the tubs are glued to the back end, but they're not glued to the front half of the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and make my notes, take it apart, do the grinding, and then we'll do another test fit, and hopefully at that point it's ready to glue. So I spent some time grinding on the bonding strips and the roof to make everything fit as good as I can, and I'm pretty happy with the fit up. I still need to manipulate my clamps a little bit to figure out exactly where they need to go, but this is just to give me an idea to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. All of our door gaps are looking good. I found it works really well using the cherry picker to pick up the back end just a little bit. Whenever I set it down, I use ratchet straps lightly from the back window to the windshield opening, and that pulls it forward, and then I'm able to get this line through here. This is what I care about the most, lining up the door tops with the roof cutout. And then I can push it side to side to even it out, and then I clamp one side down here, then I can work on that and do the same on the other side. So I think this is actually ready to glue in place. It's looking pretty good. So we need to pick it up one more time, clean everything off real good, and start putting in glue. Typically I'd have a couple people helping me do this, but we're doing this by ourselves, so we're gonna get a little creative. I have this post here sitting in our engine block, and I have this long board that I'm gonna jam through here to hold up on the roof skin whenever we pick the back up, and we're gonna glue from here back. We're gonna glue across the center, and we're gonna glue these wheel tubs. And I'll put a couple spacers in a couple strategic locations, so that way whenever we start setting this down, we don't just smear all the glue off and wipe it off. And then whenever we get the back where I'm happy, then we'll come back and we'll put glue all through here. We'll pull our board out, set the roof down, and then we know we're good. So I've let this thing cure up for a couple days just because I've been busy doing other stuff, and it looks like it turned out pretty nice. It needs a lot of sanding around some of these areas here. There's a lot of glue flashing and stuff, but the door top fits nice. I put a little piece of plastic in here, if I can get it back out, to try and prevent us from gluing the door shut, just because the glue was trying to run into the door here. I came through here with a paint stick to try and prevent this glue from sticking, but it actually may have stuck to the, no, it looks free. It may have stuck to the door a little bit, but it looks pretty good. It's gonna need a little bit of body work here and there to get it to fit. It's kind of hard to get the doors to fit to the roof that's not glued, just because there's so many variables there. So now that the roof is locked in place, we can start to really finesse the rest of it. But I gotta get all these clamps out of the way, and then we can really see what it looks like. But it looks pretty good. A couple of these gaps, like down here, this could be tightened up a hair, and it's still a little bit low right here, but we knew that going into it that it was going to be a little goofy right there. But that can be brought up with body work, and I think we can manipulate this door top some more. But now we have a target that we can hit. I think we may even need to push this door top out a little bit, and that will bring this whole thing up. So there's a little bit of finessing we can do here, but I feel confident that we'll be able to get it. So now we need to get all these clamps out, and let's fit the dynamic center part of the floor. We need to cut a bigger hole for the tunnel right here because we've modified the heck out of that center tunnel. I have the center floor mocked up in here. It fits really nice. I had to do just a little bit of trimming, and I still have my piece of plywood in here for my spacer. And I want to show you the clamp setup we have. So we have 2 clamps on either side of the roof, clamping a board across, and that gives us a pushing point down to here. So I couldn't really get a clamp in here. Mine are too short, and they would just want to slide. So by doing this, this gives us a good stop. I'm pushing off of this part of the floor into this part of the floor, and that's giving us a nice tight joint all the way around here. I did have to do some trimming around the tunnel because we had to raise the tunnel for the drive shaft. Now in the back, I have a jack handle with some clamps on it, and I'm using these clamps as like a holding point basically for these other clamps. And then so the jack handle doesn't stand up, I have clamps pushing the jack handle down from the deck of the car, if that makes sense. So this is our clamping apparatus, but you can see the whole way throughout we have a nice tight gap in the back. It sits nice and tight through here, and it fits really snug. So I'm happy with the way all of that fits up. This is a little bit of a goofy setup, but you have to do what you have to do, and it's good to have lots of clamps and random pieces of wood and scraps and whatever. So I'm going to pull all this out. I'll probably trace where we need to glue, so that way I can lay the glue on the car, and then we'll plop the tub in, reclamp it like this, and we'll be good to go. I have the center of the floor glued in, and everything turned out nice. Whenever I go through here, I just try to get a nice edge of glue here just to help us get a nice weatherproof seal and just to make sure everything's nice and tight. So once I glued it in, I just kind of ran my finger around to make sure everything's nice and tight, and all the clamps look good. Everything should glue up nice. So now we're just going to let this cure up over the weekend, and then that'll wrap it up for the floor portion of the car. Now, whenever this does dry, I want to come through here before I get the quarter panels on and kind of clean this edge up. You can see that this edge is a little bit lower than the floor and it's kind of wavy. So once that's glued, I'll just come through there and grind that off and blend it in, and then it'll be easier for them to body work and make that look nice later. Now there is a little difference here between my tunnel and the way this floor was, which I figured there would be, but we'll just come through here and hand lay some fiberglass in this area just to get a nice transition. So that's no big deal, but everything looks really nice, and I'm really happy with the way this turned out. So definitely get creative with your clamps. I didn't have to use any screws, and it turned out nice. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you guys are enjoying this project. For once, it's actually looking like a split window, and when we pick it up off the chassis, the body will all come up together. I don't have to pick it up by hand anymore and, you know, lug the back end around. It's really good to see it like this. Next week's video will probably be on me installing the smooth firewall kit from Dynamic. I have some of their adhesive to review and to talk to you guys about. Then we're going to be jumping into the quarter panels and the front end, and this thing's going to be going home. And we're also in the process of moving forward on a house, so there should be a video on that because it has a little surprise. Of course, there would have to be a little car tucked away whenever we buy a house. So that's going to be coming up in a future video as well. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I have a lot of work to do, so I'll catch you guys later.